And then a bell rang, a priest came out, everybody stood except for me, the Protestant in the back. I was just kind of jotting observations. And as the Mass began, immediately what struck me was this is just what Justin Martyr and Hippolytus and the Liturgy of St. Mark had shown me. You have the opening rite followed by the penitential rite and the assurance of mercy and forgiveness. And then suddenly a lector got up and read from the Bible, from the Old Testament. I hadn't heard the Old Testament read in our church in almost 2 years. And then a second reading in a weekday Mass, and it too was taken from the Old Testament, the book of Psalms. And then everybody stood up, and I heard the gospel while I was sitting there thinking, why are Catholics the ones standing out of reverence for the gospel? How come we never heard of that before? And as I listened to the gospel, it struck me, this is what Augustine used to do. He'd find in some Old Testament text the terms, the words, the promises that Jesus is talking about fulfilling in the Gospels. This is a perfect match. And then they sat down and listened to a homily that was over in less than 2 minutes, leaving at least me feeling very underwhelmed. I could take it from here, Father. I could show you what the early fathers would have done with that. I didn't think that was appropriate. And then all the action shifted away from the pulpit or the ambo to the altar. And then I realized this is a perfect match. I've just sat through the liturgy of the Word, the synaxis of the ancient church, and now what's about to unfold is the liturgy of the Eucharist. And as I sat there, listening to the Eucharistic preface, and then the prayer, and I heard a Catholic priest pronounce the words of consecration for the first time in my life. He said, "This is my body," and when he elevated the host, it was like all of the doubts were just draining out of my heart and my mind. I was at the edge of the pew whispering under my breath, "My Lord and my God, it's you, isn't it? That's you." I felt like doubting Thomas. And when he consecrated the chalice, I found myself literally, drooling with this holy thirst for Christ's body and blood, wondering, what is going on here? Well, I was trying to sort it all out. The people began chanting on cue, "Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, have mercy on us." Then a second time, "Lamb of God." Then a third time, "Lamb of God." They dropped to their knees. The priest elevated the host. And a fourth time, I'm hearing, "Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." And suddenly, a light came on. And I turned to the back of the Bible. I looked down on the pages of the book of Revelation, where I knew from years of reading, Jesus is called many things. Lord of Lords, King of Kings. But the one thing he's called there, more than all the other titles, is Lamb of God, Lamb of God, Lamb of God. In 28 verses, in just 22 chapters, and nobody had ever explained to me, why is that the all-encompassing title for Jesus? No other New Testament writer calls him Lamb